This tutorial will serve as an introduction to the World Assembly, WA. I've referenced it in pretty much every one of my tutorial videos to this point, but haven't really gotten around to discussing what it is. In short, the World Assembly is the world's governing body, much like the United Nations, UN, in real life. Funny story actually, the World Assembly actually used to be called the United Nations. That is, until real-life UN sent Max Berry a cease and desist letter. One would think they have better things to do with their time. Membership in the WA is voluntary, but all member nations must abide by the results of the resolutions. The WA has two components, the General Assembly, GA, and the Security Council, SC. The General Assembly is designed for passing resolutions that improve the world, whereas the Security Council is designed for commending and condemning nations and regions, as well as liberating regions. General Assembly resolutions can affect your national statistics, but the results are usually so small that I hardly ever notice, if ever. Commended and condemned nations and regions get a special badge. Liberated regions are prohibited from having password protection capabilities, which can jeopardize the security of a region or help remove raiders from the territory. There's a lot of gameplay, GP politics, that surrounds decisions of the WA. Each WA nation in the world can vote in both sections of the World Assembly, and individual member nations get one vote each. The WA is also the mechanism by which delegates can rise to power. So if you look at a typical region, there are two official positions, founder and WA delegate. In TNP, since we are a game-created region, we don't have a founder. In which case, so the WA delegate here, Sawale, is the only official position in the region. What this means is that the legitimate government in the North Pacific has to have additional plans for security, which is why the office of the Vice Delegate and the Security Counselors are so important. The WA delegate of a region is the nation with the single most endorsements. So in this case, Sawale has 1,117 endorsements, which is more than any other nation in the region by a substantial margin. But there doesn't necessarily have to be any margin whatsoever, besides just one vote. So in the case of a tie, in which the tie is between like the incumbent and another nation, the incumbent delegate will hold power. In the case of a tie in which it's between two like non-incumbent nations, then the new delegate is chosen randomly, or perhaps by presidency time, between the tied nations. And this is sort of like an off-chance occurrence. It doesn't happen very often, and hopefully it won't happen in TNP until the next delegate is legitimately elected. The game updates twice, once at midnight Eastern Time, which is referred to as the major update, and once at midday Eastern Time, which is referred to as the minor update. Any endorsements, or endos, that a nation has will become verified endorsements at the updates. Nations with more endorsements than the current delegate also become elected as the next delegate. As you can imagine, a number of governmental systems evolve around this simple principle. Most functional regions have a regional constitution which dictates how member nations elect officials and how these elections operate. Many regions mandate that WA members endorse the legitimate delegate and set endorsement limitations, referred to as endorsement caps or endo caps for short, to prevent a nation from getting too close to the delegacy. Additionally, many regions discourage nations from endorsing a large number of the WA members in a region because many of those WA members may endorse you back. This is often referred to as endo-tarding. Doing so can give you a surge of endorsements that can exceed the native delegate's endorsement count. TNP, notably, has neither of these requirements. Instead, we encourage nations to widely endotard, and endorsing the delegate and security counselors is optional, albeit recommended, as doing so supports regional security. While counterintuitive, this results in TNP being more secure and powerful, as each WA nation naturally builds up more influence. We also end up with more WA nations in total, which builds voting potential. The delegate of a given region has a much larger influence in the WA, proportional to their endorsement count. Delegates' votes, like those of individual member nations, are worth, or rather, unlike those of individual member nations, are worth more than a count of one. Instead, they are worth one vote for each endorsement they have. So I'm trying to find an example here during the greenhouse gas cap and trade program here. If we see the voting is skewed heavily in favor of 4, but this isn't just individual nations voting. If we go here to show delegate votes, we can see these here are the contributions of individual nations, and this is also individual nations. So just among individual nations, the proposal is also widely going 4, so it's about 4-1 here. However, that's not the overall odds, as delegates have contributed a massive number of votes to the scheme, and you can see the number of votes that each delegate has contributed down here. So what this ends up happening is that Sawale, having 1,118 verified endorsements, has 1,118 votes in the World Assembly, both WA and GA sides. This means that he has a very large influence over any given vote. You see, his vote here alone is about half that of all the individual nations in the world combined currently voting for this resolution. So many regions allow their delegate to vote however they like. In the North Pacific, we have a branch of the executive staff devoted to discussing and deciding the delegate's vote on any given resolution. The delegate is allowed to contribute in these discussions as well as add a single vote, to the outcome. The result of the vote of the WA staff is used as a suggested vote for the delegate, and while the delegate usually follows this directive, they are not technically required to do so. Nevertheless, members of the WA staff can thus have a tremendous influence on the result of WA votes. More on the WA staff will be covered in a future video. Additionally, the rating defending R&D minigame will be reserved for a future video as well. There's simply too much material to cover. Hopefully this was helpful. That's all for this tutorial. In the next tutorials, I will provide an introduction to the rating defending minigame R&D. You're listening to NBS, your compass for navigating the region and the wider NS world.